to this week's Travel Talk show. Today we are heading to the remoteness of the heart of Africa. This is a great tour. I'm very excited to present this tour because this is something very different from anything we've done before. We are heading to Central African Republic and the Republic of Congo. And we're going to look at some of the lodges and the animals and the experiences that you could expect very much in the remote heart of Africa. So a little bit about the Women's Travel Club. If you are not familiar with us or if you haven't traveled with us previously, the Women's Travel Club does small group tours for women all over the world. We really do tours that go beyond the ordinary, and this is a great example of that. And we like to have inclusions on our tours that are a little bit different, a lot of hands-on, a little bit, you know, kind of things that will make the tour remarkable for you. So when you're done the tour, you look back and you think, oh, that is something that I didn't expect. That is amazing. So a lot of those kind of experiences. We do, again, small groups. So it could be up to 16 women on a tour, sometimes much smaller. So in this case, this tour is a very small group, and we're only looking at taking 6 on this tour. So so very kind of unique and exclusive event for this tour. A bit about who we are. I'm Marianne Salto. I am the marketing director, so I am the one who puts on a lot of these presentations. You'll see me doing this, or you'll see me on our Facebook page and Facebook group doing posts and such. I am joined with Irene Murray from the Women's Travel Club. She is head of the operations department, and she is who you will usually get in touch with if you call in, if you send an email to our general email box, or if you're on our website and using the chat functions. A lot of times it will be Irene on the end of that chat. So if you have contacted us previously about anything, or if you've traveled with us, I'm sure you have chatted with Irene and got to know her pretty well. And we are joined by a couple of very special guests. They're joining us all the way from Africa, in South Africa, kind of either in Cape Town in the case of Richard, and close to Kruger National Park, Sandra. So we're very thankful that they have joined us. It's pretty late there, and we appreciate that they have taken the time. Anderson Expeditions is a safari company that arranges tailor-made specialist expeditions. Richard has spent 20 years guiding and traveling extensively in both Africa and South America. Richard's passionate about taking these extraordinary places to as many return guests and first-time visitors. He relishes time spent designing unique itineraries and experiences, and is steadfast in maintaining the precedent that no Anderson expedition itinerary has been traveled more than once. Hi, Richard, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Marianne. Thank you very much for having us. Excited to be here.
Oh, we are excited to learn all about these amazing destinations from you. And Sandra. Sandra is passionate about nature and people. She has unrivaled energy and a sunny attitude to life that shines through in everything she does. Her extensive operations and travel and ecotourism experience are put to great use at Anderson Expeditions, where she manages and creates unique wildlife and wilderness experiences. Sandra now lives in a nature reserve close to Kruger National Park with her 2 crazy dogs and husband and best friend, Fraser. Hi, Sandra. Welcome.
Hi, Marianne. Hi, everybody. Great to meet you. Great to see you all. Wonderful to be here.
I will let Richard and Sandra take over, and they can kind of further introduce themselves, probably give a better explanation even of what Anderson Expeditions does. And then they will take us on this great virtual journey to the heart of Africa.
Thanks, Marianne and Irene. Great to be here. That was a pretty in-depth introduction. Thank you for that. Yeah, I think you summarized it very well in terms of the types of trips and the types of travel that we operate and plan into Africa. We about 6 or 7 years ago, we started taking trips into Chad. And we quickly realized that not only were those kinds of off-piste experiences really what got us excited, but we also realized that there was a really growing kind of niche demand for these undiscovered places, if you like, in Africa. And there's so much more beyond the traditional countries that we obviously love also, but there is so much more beyond those to explore, and a lot of these places have wonderful infrastructure. The access is actually significantly easier than you would think. Really good guides, great camps with lots of charm, well run, and logistics that, if you put the time and effort into managing and operating the logistics, you can get it really, quite neat and put together a wonderful itinerary to these places. So the Republic of Congo and Central African Republic is a wonderful example of that. I've done a number of trips there. I'm on a trip in a couple of weeks at the end of March with some clients. And we're also very fortunate in that we've got Sandra, who runs all our remote wilderness expeditions, who actually opened Odzala National Park for the previous or for the original company that ran it. And Sandra's husband, Fraser, who we all think is amongst the premier guides in Africa, he was there to open this Odzala National Park also. So we feel like we've got a great team in terms of really understanding these places and being able to deliver them to our guests and to your guests. Should I take you through the background on Congo?
Sure, I was just muted. I'm talking away and I'm like, oh, I'm muted. So this is the map of Africa, and you can see in here the Republic of Congo and Central African Republic, which are definitely kind of right smack in the middle of Africa. Did you want to give us a little background on either country or a little more?
Yeah. Look, I think what's really important is, and kind of the big draw card really of getting into these two countries, is that you are in the prime areas of the Congo Basin. And, this is the second largest rainforest area left on the planet. It's a significant, habitat in a world sense, really. And to a large extent has been, in a traditional safari sense, or exploring Africa, has been ignored to some extent. But in terms of experience and wildlife, it's one of the most, the richest environments you could go into. We'll see and talk more a bit on the wildlife later, but Odzala, Republic of Congo, and the Central African Republic, and probably with Gabon, those are the three prime countries to explore the Congo Basin. And then leading on from the map, essentially your primary access into Republic of Congo. So it's important to make the differentiation between Republic of Congo and the DRC, or the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is the sort of giant central country to the east of the highlighted countries on your previous map. Republic of Congo's, so there it is at number 1. And just to the east, so to the right of that giant country, that's the DRC, previously known as Zaire. So they can often be confused because they share the same name, but the Republic of Congo is a very stable, safe and easy to travel country. The primary access is through the capital, Brazzaville. It's quite a dramatic location on the Congo River, with Kinshasa, the capital of the DRC, on the other side. A truly kind of bustling African city, lots of traffic, lots of people. It has got this waterside atmosphere, which really lends it some charm. We have a good team on the ground there in terms of vehicles and local guides who we rely on to kind of get us under the hood, if you like, of what's going on in Brazzaville. And a really good hotel there in terms of the Radisson, which is, I mean, it's not, we wouldn't sell that bit as part of the sort of lodge experience, but it's comfortable after a long flight. It's a good place to be. Again, set right on the river, so you've got you've got good views. You can see the action. There's lots of these pirogues and boats that are crossing the river to trade. There's people fishing in front of the hotel, so a lot of atmosphere. And then time dependent, there's a good list of things to do for those wanting to explore. I quite like getting into the markets. There's one market in particular that's not far from the hotel that's really quite interesting. A lot of these textiles and clothes you see on the picture on the top right, and the lady wearing in the bottom picture. And then there's the colonial architecture and so on. My favorite thing to do is to get onto the river. And so depending on when people arrive and closer to the sort of time of the trip, we then start discussing these options, and we'll get a boat and get onto the river. And you kind of, it's this amazing, giant river, iconic river of Africa, with these two bustling African cities on either side. So it's a great experience to kick the trip off. Marianne, just in terms of maybe the last thing on Brazzaville at this stage, it's, as I say, we've got a great ground team who look after us, and vehicles and guides and so on, but it's in no way and we get this question a bit, which is why I'm handling it, but in no way do you feel unsafe. You treat your behavior as you would in any major city in the world. So you're not going to go and, walk around middle of the night kind of stuff. Yeah, in terms of feeling safe and feeling comfortable, within the norms of how you'd behave anywhere, really, it's a safe and fun place to be. Okay, so Odzala, I guess this is the gem in terms of protected areas in the Republic of Congo, and for lots of reasons, it's probably the most well-known Congo Basin protected area, of all of them. There's a few more. Just to the right of where you can see the little dot saying Cabo Airstrip, there's an amazing park there that's going to come online we're hoping within the next year. That's called Nubali and Doki. And there's some wonderful parks in Central African Republic and in Gabon, but Odzala has kind of got really ahead of the curve in terms of getting themselves well protected. They're managed by African Parks, and and you may well have heard of them. They're probably the preeminent conservation entity in Africa right now. And they're doing an amazing job in places like Chad, Malawi, Mozambique, Angola, and at Odzala, in terms of managing, protecting, building in communities, so that they're benefiting from the park being managed and from travelers coming in to visit and track gorillas and so on. So it's a kind of being held up as a bit of a model in essence for protected areas in the Congo Basin. It's obviously also home to great variety and diversity of habitats. So you've got a few large rivers, including the one that we would be on during the trip, called the Lokoli River. You've got these amazing areas of kind of savanna, which looks quite similar to, parts of East Africa, and then mixed in with giant patches of rainforest. And then obviously along the rivers, incredible riverine gallery forest. And then you have these amazing, it's referenced in your text there, these amazing open areas, which are called bays. And bays are essentially, where the forest kind of opens up. It's often circular, but not necessarily. It sometimes follows a watercourse, but it's an open area within the forest that draws the wildlife to it, because it gives them access to drinking water, and it also provides salt licks, if you like, of sorts, and open area for them to get out of the forest. So they're great wildlife viewing areas and really amazing areas to explore.
So our
Yes.
first camp is going to be here at Ngaga. So we will, how do we get into the camp from Brazzaville?
So we fly on a plane from Brazzaville direct into the park. The flight, I think, is something like an hour and a half, 2 hours. We land in the park, a really good airstrip. Our vehicles are waiting for us there, and it's a very, very scenic drive. I mean, I remember the first time I arrived, I absolutely loved that drive. Again, it's about 2 hours of drive. You start off in the savanna systems, and then you get into this incredible forest. You start seeing the elephant tracks and the elephant sign and buffalo in the savanna. As you can see, that part of the park is slightly removed from the main part of the park where Ngaga camp is. You're not aware essentially of, there's no fences or anything like that. There might be a path or a track of sorts where our guides will point out we're now kind of officially out of the park and now we're going back into it, but it's really all forest, and these are just the designated protected areas. Ngaga camp is where the habituated gorillas are, and it's a very forested, densely forested area with primary forest, prime gorilla habitat. They love this specific type of plant called Marantaceae, and there's a lot of that available in this area around Ngaga. An incredible project to study gorillas has been based out of that area for I think since 1991, something along those lines. And we will actually spend some time with the lady who is running that scientific project and that research. She's based at Ngaga camp. So that's why we go there primarily for the gorilla tracking.
So we can look
So there's a little right up. Sorry, carry on.
I was just going to say
Marianne.
we can look a little bit at the camp itself and what to expect.
Yes, so further to our question earlier, just before we started, there's 6 rooms in all of the camps. You know, so they're really small and intimate. This is kind of perched in the forest, and you're quite high up in the forest, and it gives you, I mean, it's full of bird life, full of activity. You can see the main area there on the top picture. If it's, you know, good weather, then obviously they'll light the fire in the fire pit. And then behind there, you've got a sort of restaurant, bar area. And that's sort of your meeting place. That's where you'll have your meals. The rooms below, all the rooms have, you know, warm water, flushing toilets. You see a fan in there. It's typically quite warm. You've got I think in March, your average temperature is kind of in the late 20 degrees Celsius. So the fan does get used, but mostly really comfortable. And at night, it can get quite cool. So it's conditions are pretty good.
Okay, we have a little video to kind of show a little bit more of the camp and what it's like.
Yeah, as you can see, the gorillas are the stars of the show at Ngaga, and that's really what you're there to see. So we've got 2 days of gorilla tracking. For those who've been tracking mountain gorillas, you'll know that, you know, 1 hour with the gorillas kind of flies by very quickly, and you've either only taken photos for your 1 hour or you haven't taken enough. So you kind of need another trip to go and make up for what you haven't done on the first one. But, you know, and then the other thing is that the experience can be so different from one day to the other. So you can find, you know, on your first day, you can trek for a long period of time, and you find the gorillas, you know, mostly up in the trees. One of the differences of lowland gorillas is that they do spend quite a lot more time in the trees than mountain gorillas. So you could have a sighting where they're in the trees, which is really great because they're active and they're moving. You get a lot of behavior and you know, interesting behavior out of that when they are on the feed. And then the next day you could find them in a bai. So that picture on the left is actually, I took that picture. That's in a small bai, and it is, I guess, a third of the size of a football field, the open area. So we went through dense forest, came out into this little open area, a third of the size of a football field, and all the gorillas were kind of in the open area. Just as the forest started, in the back of the picture, you can see is the silverback. And so we were lying down on the floor and taking the photos of the gorillas in the open. So that's obviously, you know, kind of what you want. You know, if you can get a day like that, then you'll really take it. But the 2 days offers you the variety and also the best possibilities for you know, different types of experiences. Primary differences in mountain gorillas and lowland gorillas, I guess the big thing is the population sizes. So mountain gorillas are probably more famous because there is around 1,000 mountain gorillas left now. And then you've got about 100,000 Western lowland gorillas. And 22,000 of those are in Odzala, which is a phenomenal amount. So Sandra and I were having a chat earlier today, and she was saying how regularly when she worked there, how regularly they actually bumped into gorillas, you know, either driving around or on foot, unhabituated wild gorillas. And we'll get to it later, but that happened to us on our last trip to Sangha in the CAR also, where we actually saw gorillas. We went on a gorilla track. You know, and then the mountain gorillas, they're darker, they've got a kind of longer fur. The lowland gorillas typically lighter, less sort of furry. And then the really cool thing with them is they've got this sort of red russet cap. We'll see in some of the pictures on the top of the lowland gorilla head. But otherwise they're quite similar, and in terms of power of experience, it's you know, it's a very similar feeling, you know, being with the gorillas. In terms of the experience, you know, on mountain gorillas, you're obviously hiking up a volcano to get to them, whereas in the lowland gorilla sense, you are on flat ground, you're walking on relatively easy mountain, rainforest pathways. There's some hacking and cutting of branches to get through to certain areas, but you don't have the, you know, you're not gaining in altitude. So I guess that's probably the prime difference.
Okay, so now we leave Ngaga and continue on in our journey. It seems like the gorilla part is such a big draw. There's so much tour still left to go, so much still left to see. We've just started.
Yes, it has just started, and it, you know, I think that's right. People are drawn to the Congo and to Rwanda and Uganda and so on for the gorillas, but you know, everybody who does these trips realizes there's so much more. This day from Ngaga to Lango is probably one of my favorite days on this whole trip. So it's like, can be termed a travel day, but it's just, you know, it's a very full day. So from leaving Ngaga, you drive back through that into that main part of the park. What we try and organize, we have a very close relationship with African Parks. You go through their headquarters area, and what we try and do is you know, likely on that day, but we like to give our guests some insight into, you know, the management of the park, the challenges of conserving this area specifically, and conservation in Africa generally. And you know, the park directors often around, and we'll either join them for lunch or invite them for lunch at one of our camps at some other point. But you will go through the African Parks headquarters and get an idea of how that all works. And then if you haven't had lunch there, we would potentially stop at Mboko camp and have a lunch. And then it's down onto the Lekoli River, which is just a beautiful river, you know, dripping rainforest vegetation over the river. And then it also opens up into little open areas predominantly where water comes into the river, and you can have wonderful elephant viewing, forest buffalo viewing. We saw chimpanzees from the river last time. But from that Mboko base, you get into kayaks, and we kayak down the river for a couple of hours. Bird life is spectacular. As I said, some great animal viewing. We had an elephant crossing the river in front of us last time, so pretty exciting stuff. And after a few hours, you pull your kayaks up at the base of a bai, and that is called Lango Bai, after which the Lango camp is named. And you then have an afternoon walk up the Lango Bai and into Lango camp, which you know, most of the time you're going to see in Lango Bai a good number of wildlife. So forest buffalo there very regularly, forest elephant very regularly, sitatunga, red river hogs, and various other things. It's also an amazing place to see African grey parrots and green pigeons that come down and use the salt like the mammals do. So there you're into Lango camp. You can see that the main design of the rooms between Ngaga and Lango are pretty similar. Where in Ngaga you're in the forest and you're kind of surrounded by forest. This you very much at Lango, the focus is the bai and the open area. So you see that top picture, they're looking straight out onto the bai. So literally in that grassland there, you'll have, all of the animals that I've mentioned, a herd of forest buffalo walking past in the morning, all these parrots and green pigeons coming down, palm nut vultures flying over. It's just a spectacular location. Beautiful big deck. So again, when you come in from the afternoon activities, you have a sundowner. Quite often have a sundowner on the deck there, and then dinner in one of the venues around the lodge. But the rooms are pretty similar in terms of amenities, kind of tastefully constructed and made, and very comfortable.
Okay, and we have another little video to show.
So the big question we often get, and we have to convince our guests on, is this walking in the water?
I was just going to ask about that.
Yeah, that's normally the big one, and it sounds pretty gnarly, and it looks like it is, but it's actually one of the best parts of the whole experience at Lango. You're not spending the entire day waist deep in water, and kind of that's the only way you can get around. It's very dependent on, obviously, water heights. So you can have, a lot less water than you're seeing in these pictures. But typically what you kind of need to be prepared to do is what you see in the top left picture. So those people are, and that's walking up Lango Bai. I was explaining that from where you leave your kayaks on the first day and walk up into the camp. Part of the time you walk is in the bai like that. So underneath the water is sand. So it's flat, it's it's compact, it's actually very comfortable to walk. Some people, particularly some seasoned guides, take their shoes off. We recommend using things like trainers, light footwear, comfortable light footwear. And once you're in there and you're ankle deep or knee deep, and you're coming in and out of the water, and you do that a few times, you almost forget that you're doing it. But it's a novelty, and it's fun, and in no way uncomfortable. But obviously, it goes without saying that you've got to have a level of fitness. This whole experience is not about sitting on the back of a Land Rover for 10 days. This is a proper adventure. We are out and about on foot. We're walking in forest, top right picture there. We're walking in savannah. We're walking in the bays. And what's wonderful is it is mixed in with things like boats and kayaks and safari drives. So there's variety, but you've got to be comfortable and enjoy walking and being active.
Okay, so heading on in our itinerary. So we're going to leave Lingo Camp now and go to Mboko Camp.
Yes, so we mentioned this before in potentially stopping for lunch on the way to Lango the last time. So this is kind of in a way, the headquarter camp of Odzala. It's set up on a tributary of the Lekoli, and in the savannah. So suddenly when you arrive there, you start seeing different birds. There are these patches of slightly higher altitude forest, which is known as dry forest, and they're really cool to you typically would do a game drive through the savannah, viewing things like forest buffalo, which you love it out there, and then you'd find this amazing patch of dry forest and do a morning walk through the dry forest, come back to your safari vehicle, and then a gentle safari drive back to the camp. It's also very close to the Lekoli River, and on our last trip we had guests who really loved the kayaking. So when we got back to Mboko, we made a plan to go kayaking again. But the other great thing to do from Mboko, other than the safari drives and walks, is to boat on the river. So you can obviously cover a lot more ground than you can on the kayaks. And it's just great being out on the boat, much easier for photography than it is from the kayak. You can go and have your sundowner on the boat, or do an afternoon or morning, and then come back to the camp for your dinner or breakfast.
Okay. And we have another little video.
Some nice shots there of the kayaking, which gives you that perspective. And then top right picture here, you can see the boating. You can see how spectacular that river is. And I mean, it's filled to the brim with wildlife. So it's a wonderful location. Then from Mboko, it's time to leave Odzala. So it's back to the airstrip, the park airstrip, and we then fly north up to Cabo airstrip. So that is just on the national border of the Republic of Congo. Where the green bit is essentially the Central African Republic, and the black side on the left there, that's Cameroon. Excuse me. So once you land at Cabo, the flight, I think, is about 40 minutes, 30 minutes. It's a very short, comfortable flight. You land at the airstrip. We have vehicles waiting there. and you're transported 5 minutes down the road through a little village to the Sangha River, which is it's one of the giant feeder rivers of the Congo. And there the boats will be waiting for our guests and guides. And you're then on this incredible 6-hour, and everyone says it's 4 or 5 hours. I like to say it's 6 because it's actually it's one of those things where you think you might be in for a long haul of travel, and the experience is one of the highlights of the whole journey. You're on this boat, you're going upriver, you've got Cameroon, Central African Republic, and the Republic of Congo kind of on the borders of the river. It's a beautiful forest for the most part. Quite a lot of fishing villages on the Cameroon side, but on the other two countries, mostly forest. These huge sweeping sandbanks full of birds. You know, you've got plovers on the beaches, which you obviously stop and have a look at, palm nut vultures and parrots and so on flying over. And so we'll have drinks and snacks and what have you on the boat, but you've got this half day of journeying, in this forest environment where you kind of feel a bit like one of the original explorers in many ways. So kind of mid-afternoon, out of nowhere, you arrive at this amazing lodge that's in the forest, but literally hanging over the river. And that's called Sangha Lodge. And you're now in the Central African Republic. This is probably one of the most remote lodges in Africa, really. This is a great way to get there, but it is really very little, around Sangha Lodge and the Dzanga-Sangha Park. The primary reason that people go to this lodge is for probably the most famous bai in Africa, which is called the Dzanga-Sangha Bai, or Dzanga Bai, which is within the Dzanga-Sangha Reserve. And that picture on the top left is a small representation of that bai, but you spend the good part of a day sitting on a wooden platform overlooking this giant open area, and it is constantly filled with elephants, buffalo. We were really hoping that we would get to see a bongo. And after a couple of hours, we had a herd of about 10 bongos come in from that top corner. And we thought we'd struck it lucky, and everybody was high-fiving and, very excited. And then over the course of the next few hours, about another 5 herds of bongo. We think we saw 60 to 80 bongo. So like beyond expectations, and then you'll see giant hogs, sitatunga. The elephants are really the stars of the show, lots of forest buffalo, and amazing bird life. So that's a very special day, sitting out on this wooden platform and looking at really one of the great spectacles in Africa. For me, up there with seeing the migration, seeing gorillas, it's a very special experience. That's not all there is at Sangha, though. One of the other really unique experiences, and I think it might be on one of the following slides, but is going on a hunting expedition with the Baaka Pygmy people. And it's always I guess the cultural kind of immersion is always it's a difficult experience to manage, because sometimes it becomes created for the travelers who are there, and this one is really fascinating, and you really feel like you're a part of it. So the primary thing that they're doing is trying to hunt for duiker in the forest, And the reality is, in the Congo Basin, there is a significant amount of bushmeat, being harvested by surrounding communities. So even at Odzala, which is, probably the best protected park in the central rainforest area, you will pass on the perimeter of the park, you will regularly pass like a small motorbike going past, and they have bushmeat on the back of the motorbike, and predominantly those are daika. So it's the reality of where you are, and that's, I guess, one of the major challenges is managing that. But in terms of the hunting with the baka, we had a phenomenal experience where they actually managed to catch a daika, which was, both amazing to watch and emotional, but it was certainly a cultural experience that you wouldn't have really in many other places. So over and above that, also wonderful walks to do from Sangha Lodge. We don't include it because of the gorilla experience at Odzala, but there are gorillas there. There are habituated gorillas and chimpanzees, and also some standout birds. And I think you've got Rod is in your video there, who's the owner, and he's a brilliant bird man. So maybe you want to play that and see what he's got to say.
I do have a quick question first. We haven't talked at all about predators. Are there any big cats, any big predators for all of this wildlife that's there?
Yeah, so they're thinking of reintroducing lions into Odzala. So there aren't lions. Quite interestingly, the apex predator at Odzala is a spotted hyena, which is not something you'd expect to find in the forest. In fact, we had a wonderful sighting on Lango Bay of a spotted hyena, but they're the apex predator, really. There are leopard around, but the reality is, if you saw leopard, Sandra, did you see leopards when you were at Odzala? I think she's lost me.
Oh, she might be. Oh,
Yeah, we actually were quite lucky. We had quite a few leopards. Can you hear me?
Yes,
I
I
can hear
can.
you. Yeah.
No?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, we actually saw quite a few leopards when we lived there in the early days, especially on the forest roads between Lango and Mboko. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, great.
Amazing.
So yeah, that was really amazing, and they weren't that shy either. So we got some good pictures of them. There were two young males that we saw regularly. And then the hyenas are pretty incredible. Yeah, they would take down whole buffaloes, like in the pack, hunting.
Oh, wow.
They'd come in the night, they roam around Lango, around the lodge, you hear them. So that was very fascinating. There was a German hyena researcher. I think he's still doing work there. Yeah, so those are the main predators at the moment. Yeah.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think a lot of the wildlife you see, although it's all slightly different, and that's where the sort of draw card of this wildlife viewing experiences is, the forest elephants, and you kind of get to study elephants anew, because it's in some ways it's a different animal. It looks different. The forest buffalo the same, and then these unique things like bongo, which you see bottom left here. Great sightings of Sitatunga. I don't know how many days I've spent in Okavango Delta looking for Sitatunga, and then you see like a bum disappearing into the reeds. And then on this trip, you're going to see Sitatunga out in the open, and the chance for red river hogs and giant hogs and all those kind of novelties.
Can't wait. So we have a little bit longer video now, but it is quite interesting. It'll really gives you a good overview of the area.
Sangha Lodge is unique in that it's in the rainforest and not in the savannah like most lodges in Africa. So it's, it would be more similar to something you'd have in Borneo or in South America, except we have the charismatic animals, elephants and gorillas. Sangha Lodge is in the extreme southwestern tip of Central African Republic. 30 kilometers to our west is the Cameroon border, and 30 kilometers east is the Republic of Congo border. It's in 1,000 square kilometers of area. It's got no roads, no villages, no people, anything. So we're in a wild place. Dzanga-Sangha, which is the ultimate elephant experience in the world. You'll see up to 150 elephants on a good day. You can have a chance of seeing bongos, buffaloes, red river hog, giant forest hog as well in these bars. Habituated gorillas, just as you would see in Rwanda or Uganda. These are Western lowland gorillas. We have this unique culture, the Barker culture. You have a chance to go out with Barker net hunting, looking at medicinal plants, actually how to build their huts. So this is not a contrived day out. These guys are really out there to actually try and get their food. They are hunter-gatherers. Then we have superb bird watching. We have great rainforests, the biggest biodiversity in Africa, and superb landscapes, lots to do. Just to the north of us here is a river called the Yobe River that forms part of our concession, which was a hunting concession. We bought the hunting rights to and we've turned it over to ecotourism. So we hope to start kayaking trips on that. In the wet season, we'll do kayaking in the swamp forest as well. When flooded, it's going to be a very unique experience. I was a tour operator and I used to visit this area. I loved the area and I thought we could do a lot better than the offerings that were available. And I found this lodge, a South African hunter had a hunting concession here who wasn't utilizing it. So we discussed it, exchanged a little bit of money, and the short version is that's how I got here. We've been here 10 years and we hope to be here another 50 years. The idea of an ecotourism lodge is to be involved, to be committed. A lot of the big companies have the 3 C's, the conservation, community and commerce elements to their mantras. But I think it's more than that. I think you have to have total commitment to the area. We do have a lot of fun and we do feel we are making a difference. We have nearly 40 staff now because we've the lodge and the pangolin conservation program run together. 40 families that wouldn't have a breadwinner if we weren't here. Plus we support the schools and the things that everybody else does. And then, of course, we have this huge block of forest that would be trophy hunted and really protected. With the right support, we should be able to increase that to nearly 2,000 square kilometers by the end of the year. If you're interested in biodiversity and conservation, then you want to be in an area that has the richest biodiversity in the world. Yeah, that's why I'm here.
Yeah, as you can see, that's an amazing place. Just that river, you can sit in the main area of your room at Sangha, and that river is often like glass, and you get the odd pirogue coming down, and it's just the sense of place there is phenomenal. I also didn't mention the pangolin research project there. The Rod and his wife Tamar have got this kind of the communities, whenever they find a pangolin, or this, I think in one case, one had been burnt in a forest fire. They are brought these pangolins and they sort of hand rear them and then return them to the wild. And they have a dedicated person and team employed from local communities to monitor these pangolins. So that's a great experience, to be able to go out into the forest and follow a pangolin as it forages, you know, in the forest is amazing. So we definitely try and include that at some point. But there's a huge variety of things you can do there for bird watchers. You know, there's those specific walks, the one mentioned here, this Valley of the Giants, and as I said, kayaking potentially available. So there's a lot of things to do there and to choose from.
And so then we depart Dzanga and go back to Mboko, fly back to Mboko, and that is bringing us to the end of our trip, where we head back to Brazzaville and say goodbye to this most amazing area of the world. So Fraser Gear is the guide for the tour. Did you want to talk a bit about Fraser?
Sure, I'll do that, because as Sandra's husband, she probably, I'll give a more neutral perspective. But yeah, as I mentioned, you know, Fraser and Sandra opened Odzala. They explored the area before there was even a pole in the ground. They trained the teams there, and Fraser's particular focus was and is in the field with the guides. So training guides, getting everybody you know, up to speed in terms of knowledge, in terms of developing the guest experience, the activities, and so on. So there's not really a better person to be leading you into Odzala and Sangha. You know, he and Sandra have a significant amount of experience in developing properties and guiding teams and training teams in remote areas, in you know, in Uganda, in Mozambique, in Madagascar. It's a long list, but that makes for a brilliant expedition guide, because you know, we put a significant amount of work and time and travel into making sure that these trips are logistically slick, and you know, that all the parts are working together. But you're on an expedition, and you know, over and above the naturalist interpretation that you're getting from somebody who's really up there with the best guides in Africa, you're also getting somebody who's managing your trip. And when there are bumps, and quite often there are, and they're not major, but it could be a flight time change. It could be, you know, one of the boats isn't working and there's a delay for a while or whatever. There's somebody on the ground who has the experience in these places that is there to manage it and fix it and make sure that you know, the experience is not affected. So I mean, I couldn't choose a better person to lead these expeditions, and we have complete confidence in Fraser, and you know, that shows in terms of the wonderful amounts of guests that we have that come back on our trips and specifically say they're only coming if Fraser's leading them.
So I guess we'll just look at what's included in the tour. So you get your specialist expedition leader, Fraser, and all the accommodation that we discussed. the charter flights, the gorilla trekking permits, and park fees, road and boat transfers, medical evacuation is covered, and your letter of invitation for your visa applications. You still need your own travel insurance. So this is above and beyond your regular travel insurance with your out-of-country medical and such. And gratuities are included in our tour. What's not going to be included is going to be your international flights, any pre-nights, post-nights accommodation, any personal expenses, your souvenirs and such. The travel insurance that we mentioned, the fees for the visa. So you do get the letter, but you're going to have to pay for your own visa, and any, if still needed at that point, any PCR testing that might be needed. And then just some little bits of don't forget to pack, which kind of goes without saying, just your ordinary packing information.
Yeah, and I think, Marianne, I mean, I know you handle this brilliantly too, but with these places like Congo and CAR, there's a lot of information in terms of packing and kit and clothing, that we would send on, and that really helps people to get ready for the specific environment and activities and so on. So it's much more in detail than that overview. Excellent,
thank you. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our presentation. I want to thank both Sandra and Richard for joining us and for running the presentation, and for putting together such an amazing adventure. I'm slated to be the tour host on it, and I can't wait. I'm counting the days. We would like to open up for any questions there might be. So if you have a question, you can, a couple of different ways. You can type it in to the Q&A. You'll find a little menu. If you move your cursor around on the screen, you can find a little menu. There is a Q&A area. You can type a question into there, and we'll read it out. You can put a question in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand, we can actually open up your microphone and you can come on and talk and say hello to Richard and Sandra and ask them any questions you might have. Okay, so the first question is from Judy Deutscher. Hi, Judy. She's wondering, when wading in the water or kayaking, are there crocodiles in the area?
No, is the answer.
No. Good answer.
Yeah. No, not at all.
Excellent. And also Mona wonders about leeches in the river walks. I'm thinking a lot of the river walk questions are, so we should just address all the wildlife that might be in the rivers with us while we're walking.
I think we're thinking about the African Queen when he was wading through the water. Yeah, we've been watching too many movies.
Sandra, what's your experience of the leeches in the bays?
No, we've hardly had any leeches. There's other insects, so you will be mainly covered up. You will have thin long sleeve shirts and long trousers. So there are insects, but no leeches. We haven't experienced leeches. There are on the river sometimes. You get a few tsetse flies, but not a lot of them either. But you will definitely cover up when you walk around in the forest.
So what would be the vaccinations required, Marianne?
I think it would be probably fairly similar to a lot of that area of Africa. So you're gonna make sure that all your vaccines, such as all your hepatitis and your measles and your regular vaccines, are just up to date in general. Then you're gonna look at typhoid, cholera. Is yellow fever required for the, do you know, Richard? If the
Yeah, I think yellow fever is required. So the current requirements are yellow fever, and as you said, hopefully PCR test is not required, by 2023. But yellow fever test and a PCR test, at least a yellow fever certificate and a PCR test. And then in terms of a visa, we arrange an invitation letter for each person. And with that invitation letter, each traveler will then go to, Republic of Congo embassy to get a visa.
Okay, is it typically fairly easy to do once you have the letter?
Yes.
Okay, excellent.
Very straightforward. I mean, it's as similar to applying for any visa. So yeah, we haven't encountered any issues with people getting visas. The guests I'm taking in March are just in the process now, and they're from the US. They're from Los Angeles, and they are it's going relatively smoothly. So we haven't seen any issues at all.
So we have somebody asking, so they're probably not familiar with what the medical evacuation coverage is, why you have it. And another question is, where would you evacuate them to?
So the main reason we have evacuation cover in place for our guests is because if ever there was an issue that we needed to get a guest out of the park and to the first high quality medical facility, we want to be able to fast track that entire process and not have to start talking to an evacuation cover entity that's based offshore, as an example. So potentially it's the middle of the night in New York and nobody's answering the phone. And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but we know that we've got control of that part of evacuating our guest if and when we need that. So that's the primary reason we have that. What that does is it gets the traveler to the first and closest high quality medical facility. And at that point, their travel insurance would take over, or their medical evacuation would catch up by then, and then make the next decisions. Right. But the reason we do it is because it allows us to react as fast as we possibly can if we need to do that.
Thank you. Thanks for the explanation.
And actually, a lot of our expedition type tour companies do have that. So a lot of our Africa tours to different areas have that. Something like an Antarctic expedition is going to have that. And it's just their way of getting you from the remote area to the closest major medical facility. And then again, your own insurance at that point kicks in, and you may still be somewhere, not in North America, but your own evacuation insurance when you're ready to travel will then get you home to North America.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you. So question about mosquitoes.
Oh, malaria is it anti-malarial will be needed for there probably, I'm sure.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying, and Sandra was making this point, that the thing that's going to potentially create something that is going to be a hindrance to your comfort, if you like, is not the big stuff like crocodiles and even leeches and so on. It is worth noting that there can be mosquitoes, there can be, when you're tracking gorillas, you know, quite a lot of insects around. And that, you know, we would prepare you in terms of what to wear and so on. When we track gorillas, if there are a lot of insects around, the Ngaga camp actually provides kind of netting. And, you know, you'd wear that while you're with the gorillas. And then once you're out of the forest, it's not required anymore. So it's not as if it's sustained, but you could go into patches of mosquitoes or other insects. So that needs to be, you need to take that into account. But in terms of comfort and, you know, kind of animal safety, there's nothing really major other than the normal stuff on a safari, you know, that you'd need to be concerned about.
So some of the shots were showing double beds. I'm not sure I saw twins. We're offering shared occupancy, so there are obviously twin beds in some of the units.
Are they twin or 2 double beds?
I'm not sure on that. You mean they're 2 single beds or 2 double beds?
Yes, yes.
We'd have to check and let you know exactly if they made up a twin room, what sort of size they would be. I'm not sure it would be 2 doubles.
Yeah.
I would think it might be, you know, smaller than that, but let's get back to you on that.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Great. Thank you.
And the temperatures during March, you said probably in the 20s Celsius, so probably in, you know, mid 70s for mid 70s to 80s, low 80s, I guess, for Fahrenheit for Americans. Yes,
that's right. And then in terms of rainfall, it's not you know, it's not it is the rainforest, so it can, and it's the same in somewhere like Rwanda, where, you know, it can rain at any time of the year, but it's March is not in the sort of high rainfall area. I think the monthly average is something like 90 to 100 millimeters of rain in that month, so that's pretty low. Yeah, as you say, 70s to 80s in temperature. It can be humid. It can also get really quite cool, especially at night, but mostly warm and relatively clear skies.
Packing for the small planes, I'm assuming we have fairly strict luggage limits.
Yes, and this is, Sandra's better than me at these specifics. Off the top of my head, I think it's 15 kilograms of the bag that goes under. And then, you know, you would carry your camera bag and your hand luggage with you, which, you know, probably don't want it to be too heavy, but we do understand that you're going to have cameras and binoculars and things in that. But 15 kilos in your check-in, if you like, bag. And then ideally a sort of soft-sided duffel type bag that goes in and out of aircraft relatively easy and onto safari vehicles and so on.
Yeah, so preferably not wheeled and soft-sided.
Exactly.
Yeah. Any other questions? Kind of watching. Anybody want to come on and say hello? No?
They're all pretty quiet, but there's a lot of people still watching, which is great news. Obviously, they're very interested.
Yes. Excellent. Well, then I'm going to thank you again, Sandra and Richard. We really appreciate the time. I know it's getting late there, so we won't keep you any longer, but we appreciate your insight, appreciate the overview of the tour. It was wonderful. I said I can't wait to experience this. Just for everybody watching, just we do have, I think, 4 spaces left, but that's it. So if you are interested, we are limited to 6 for the tour, and that's going to be due to like vehicle size, flight size, and plus the lodges are fairly small too. So if you are interested, you might want to contact us and let us know, get on looking at booking that. And if you have come up with any questions, let us know. If we don't know the answer, Richard and Sandra are very quick to answer our emails, so we can reach out to them and get your answers for you. So, and thank you, Irene, very much for manning everything. Singles, okay, yes, there are single opportunities, and the single rates are on the website with the other rates. So there we go. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this look at some very remote and unusual destinations within Africa. I hope that some of you do decide to join us on this amazing adventure. And then I will wish everybody a good day and a good night to Richard and Sandra.
Thank
and
you.
we'll see you next week for our Travel Talk show next week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for having us.
Bye.
You're welcome.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah.